The winter season can bring extreme cold, heavy snow, and icy conditions. While it makes for a nice backdrop, it could mean big problems for you and your family.
Over the next 30 minutes, we're breaking down the science behind the storm.
We'll show you how snowflakes form, compare precipitation types, and take you back in time to look at the tri-state's biggest storms.
It was painfully cold.
Plus, what you can expect for the rest of the season. We've got all of this to keep you ahead of the storm.
Ahead of the storm. First Alert Winter Weather Special, sponsored by Roof Prodigy.
As the low, sinister clouds of an approaching winter storm surge into the tri-state and the first few flakes fly, it's my job as chief meteorologist at Fox 19 now to make sure that the First Alert forecast is accurate, up-to-date, and comprehensive, because days like this could turn into the frustration of slow progress on the way home after a long day at work, or the aches and pains of making your sidewalks safe. And don't forget the heartwarming sights and sounds of children hard at play in a winter wonderland.
You did it!
But none of those things can happen without the uncountable number of six-sided delicate snowflakes that are here in numbers way too big to count. In the storm cloud, chaos reigns as molecules of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water vapor tumble and zip about with no apparent plan. But water molecules have a way of bringing order to this tiny world, and if conditions in the cloud are just right, water molecules form six-sided ice rings. You know, those tiny ice rings are so small that 50 million of them, 50 million could fit in 1 inch on this ruler. And somehow they grow into snowstorms like this and ones that are even bigger. Like this big storm, February 4th and 5th, 1998, the 2-day total, 18.5 inches, the city nearly paralyzed. I love being out in the snow. It's actually my favorite kind of weather, but it is nice to come inside and warm up a little bit. You know, you might be wondering why water molecules form these six-sided ice rings. Well, the answer is actually simple. The white hydrogen atoms share their single negatively charged electron with the red oxygen atom. That gives the ears end of the water molecule a slight positive charge, while the oxygen has a slight negative charge. Well, as we know, positive and negative charges attract one another. In a very quick succession, water molecules are added on, ice rings grow, and by the time the snowflake begins to fall, it is millions of times larger than the ice ring it started with. While we don't know if it is true, no one has ever observed two beautiful, lacy snowflakes that are exactly alike. The six-sided snowflake is not the entire story. Anytime a winter storm comes our way, many types of precipitation are possible. Here's Ethan Emery.
Winter weather brings a variety of different types of precipitation here into the tri-state. Now, up in the clouds, it's cold enough for all precipitation to start off as snow. The journey of that snowflake as it reaches the surface goes through a variety of different temperature changes and will determine whether or not we have wet roads or icy conditions. Or if enough snow falls, you get childhood memories with snow days. When snow reaches the ground, temperatures upstairs are cold enough for the flakes to make their journey to the surface unblemished. When winter rain falls, the snowflakes melt and the air below the clouds is warm enough for liquid drops, and you have a rainy day. Sometimes the temperature of the air is on a dividing line, and it could bring us a rain-snow mix. It's a 50-50 atmosphere, and it could go either way. But there's more to winter weather than rain, snow, or a mix of the two. When ice is expected in the First Alert forecast, well, it's kind of complicated. Sometimes you can get freezing rain, or sometimes you can get sleet. Both create icy conditions and can be a problem. Sleet. To meteorologists, ice pellets, former raindrops. Now, small balls of ice that can be frozen so hard they sometimes bounce knee-high. When a warm layer beneath the clouds melts the falling snowflakes, now small raindrops are heading for the ground. Farther down, when the drops fall into a cold layer extending to the ground, they refreeze into small, hard ice pellets. The tiny ice pellets can create an appealing winter landscape. However, the impacts are not much different than snow as it accumulates and causes issues on roadways and sidewalks. When it comes to winter weather woes, freezing rain is the undisputed champion and has the right stuff to create widespread catastrophes. When a chilled raindrop lands on a surface colder than freezing, it is not liquid for very long. It splats, flows a short distance, and freezes as a clear glaze of ice. It doesn't take long for streets to sparkle in light reflected by the slippery glaze of millions of frozen drops. The shiny glaze of freezing rain produces the slickest, the heaviest, and the hardest type of winter precipitation to remove. If the freezing rain continues for long, the weight of the ice can bring down trees and power lines, causing widespread power outages, and the slipperiest variety of winter precipitation may paralyze transportation. A first alert forecast of freezing rain has two crucial factors. In all winter precipitation, the air temperature below the clouds are pivotal. But in the case of freezing rain, the recent past is key to the future challenges you will face. After an outbreak of frigid Arctic air, roads, sidewalks, tree limbs, your deck, and other surfaces can remain colder than freezing. The melted snowflakes falling from the clouds arrive at the surface as chilly raindrops. When the drops impact the ground, they freeze on contact, forming the treacherous glassy glaze. Any precipitation can bring impacts to your routine, but cold weather precipitation in all its forms will magnify your frustrations. That's why the First Alert Weather Team is here to keep you informed and issue First Alert Weather Days when necessary.
Well, throughout the last several decades, we've had some pretty big snow events. We all remember what the blizzard of 78, if you were alive. We're actually coming out of one. In fact, we saw the most snow in a 2-day period since 2008. This was back on January 5th and 6th with 10.6 inches of snow. We broke the 10 snowiest, 2-day period on record. We broke into the top 10, and it made for some sledding that was, epic, as the kids would say, across the tri-state. Next, in January of 1977, those living in the tri-state did not need a bridge to cross the river. That's because the river froze over. These pictures show people walking and even skating across the frozen river. Ice was packed anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, this after 39 days in a row of at least 1 inch of snow on the ground each one of those days. And at times during this stretch, temperatures dropped to 25 degrees below zero. A few years later, while the river did not freeze over, Riverfront Stadium was freezing over. The Freezer Bowl in 1981 brought wind chill factors of 59 below zero during the AFC Championship game between the San Diego Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Under center for the Bengals, of course, the great Ken Anderson, who remembers the 9 below zero temps and howling winds.
It was painfully cold. I mean, anybody that ever walked on the old AstroTurf, well, now take that and harden it up, 10, 11 times or maybe 100 times. It was like playing out on, 71.
It's probably one of the crowning achievements of that team to play a game under those conditions and play as well as we did. And, of course, the ultimate prize was our first trip to the Super Bowl.
It certainly did, as Ken Anderson and the Bengals won their first AFC Championship game 27-7. While we average about 23 inches of snow per season, with the 10.6 we saw in early January and a lot more to come, we will most definitely be on pace to be at average this winter.
When you think of snow, you think of a winter wonderland where all is calm and all is bright. When you think of a squall, you may think about storms that have strong winds, heavy rain, and lightning. For a snow squall, it usually doesn't have lightning, and with it being colder, it's not heavy rain, but it does have strong winds and snow. A snow squall can be intense, but not a long-lasting event. A snow squall will also bring a brief period of moderate to heavy snow along with strong winds. It happens fast enough that it will blanket grounds, cars, and roadways for a moment, even if the pavement temperature is above freezing. The winds will also be strong enough with the snowflakes to reduce visibility and potentially bring whiteout conditions with visibility less than a mile. Snow squalls can be tricky, as it can be a very narrow line that develops and may bring these impacts mentioned to one neighborhood, but a few miles away may be quiet with very little snow. When it comes to snow accumulations from snow squalls, it is very localized, with some spots seeing more than an inch of snow, while surrounding areas usually see much less. This kind of weather event can bring significant travel impacts, and snow squalls in the U.S. have been known to cause fatal accidents from the mentioned impacts of difficulty seeing the road, the brief intense snowfall, or the strong winds. The best thing to do if you must travel in these conditions are the following. Drive carefully. Keeping it slow may make you late to your destination, but slowing down is important. Have your headlights on. With visibility being reduced, it's difficult to see much of anything, but if your headlights are on, you'll have a better chance. And keep your distance, so if you must slow down, you have space just in case the road is slick. Fluctuations in the temperatures can cause water and cracks to freeze and eventually expand, causing pavement to crumble over time. That's right, 'tis the season for potholes. Rises and falls are pretty typical for the winter months, but can lead to costly repairs. They are impossible to avoid. Potholes. Ohio's freeze and thaw cycle provides the perfect conditions for sinking pavement. That means these holes in the road could be a big problem for you, especially during the colder times of the year.
Flat tire, bent wheel, bulge in tire. If you've broken a belt on the side, bulge in tire. And then we have to do a lot of alignments. It can knock your vehicle out of alignment.
On the low end, replacing a popped tire can cost $150, a price tag that can significantly increase depending on the vehicle's make and model. But if the damage occurs on a state or city-managed roadway, they may be the ones footing your bill.
Remember, ODOT only takes care of state and U.S. routes outside municipalities and all interstates in the state of Ohio except for the Ohio Turnpike. So if you have a pothole on a city street, you should report that to the city. If it's a county road, you should report it to your county engineer.
Matt Bruning is the press secretary of the Ohio Department of Transportation. He says the state covers all kinds of road claims, including potholes and falling rocks. But the timing and variety of other circumstances could affect the outcome of your reimbursement.
If you hit a pothole and you damage your vehicle, you can certainly pursue that through the Ohio Court of Claims. But what they're going to look at is, did ODOT know about the pothole or the damage, the roadway, and did we have an adequate amount of time to get out and do something about it?
The same is true for drivers in Kentucky and Indiana. In most states, claims can be filed online.
Who believes that damage has been caused by the negligence of the Commonwealth of Kentucky should start with this step.
We pulled data from the city of Cincinnati for the number of service requests created in 2023 and 24. It shows that 843 requests were created in 2023, but in 2024, that number jumped to 3,966, with the most reported in January, February, and March. While the city has addressed potholes fairly quickly, Bruning says it's harder to complete those repairs in the winter months.
In the wintertime, though, the asphalt plants are not open, so what we have to do is use a thing called cold mix or cold patch. That cold mix is a temporary. It's not meant to be a permanent solution. I have to patch that several times until we get to the spring when the asphalt plant's open and we can make a more permanent repair.
You can find the link to file a claim in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and the city of Cincinnati on our website at fox19now.com. Reporting in studio, meteorologist Ethan Emery, Fox 19 Now.
Keeping our roads clear during winter requires a lot of manpower and a lot of salt. So, how do we keep ourselves safe while limiting the impact of salt on the environment? Fox 19's newest meteorologist, Aaron Ashley, tells us it's a balancing act. Aaron, we're excited for you to join us later on this month.
Hey, Steve, I'm really looking forward to getting started. Salt is everywhere this time of year, and we need it to be. It keeps us safe. But too much of it can actually really affect those local waterways and the ecology. So finding that balance is key. And I spoke to researchers in this topic as part of Project Planet. It's a series that I produce that covers environmental issues, innovations, and interest. Take a listen.
Once the salt gets in the water, you can't see it. You can see the effects, but you can't see the salt.
Salt pollution. It's what happens when salt ends up where it naturally is not supposed to be. But how can you tell where it is?
In some systems, there might be a little bit more algae. There might be a loss of some species. So fish that were once there before the salted environment may no longer be there after the environment has been salted.
Dr. Bill Hintz researches salt concentrations in our bodies of fresh water. He says education and proper planning are the best ways to limit salt pollution.
If the air temperature, for instance, is above 30 degrees, you probably don't need much salt, right? And so when the air temperature is below 15 degrees, for instance, salt doesn't work very well.
Some salts market themselves as environmentally friendly, but Dr. Hintz clarifies.
These alternative salts to, the salt that you have on your tabletop, just classic sodium chloride, are actually worse at similar concentrations.
Massive amounts of road salts are used to de-ice the roads every single winter. In fact, salts reduce accident rates by 70 to 90%. Understanding when and how much salt to use before you use it will keep us safe during the winter, but it also limits how much salt is released into our waterways. And that's why this is part of Project Planet.
And I'm excited to bring Project Planet with me as I make the move to Cincinnati next month. I'll see you guys soon.
The month of January 2025 has been cold and snowy, but that doesn't reverse a troubling trend. Over the last 50 years, the average winter temperatures in our area have increased by more than 5 degrees. The winter temperatures in question are taken from the months of December, January, and February, and are an average of the daily high and low temperatures. In the early 70s, that average temperature was right around 30 degrees. Now, we average just above 35.
The warming trend does not mean Arctic outbreaks will end. We will continue to have really cold days in the winter months.
That means fewer days below the freezing mark, more rain or mixing events, and fewer snow events. Snow that does fall might melt faster, and the season is overall a bit shorter. Unless you are a winter sports enthusiast, that might sound like a good thing, but warmer air can hold more water vapor, which is fuel for storms, and that could potentially lead to more intense winter storms. And there are other factors to consider, like the impact on agriculture, insect pests, and local ecosystems.
So when you hear people say, man, winters were much colder and we got a lot more snow when I was a kid, there may be some truth to that statement. I'm meteorologist Catherine Bodak for Fox 19 Now.
Well, now's the time of the show that we take a look at what's happened so far this winter and we look ahead, see what we can expect as we head through the rest of the season. And of course, when we're talking about winter, we're talking about meteorological winter, December, January, and February. Well, it's hard to believe that 3 weeks ago I could have stood in this very spot with shorts and a t-shirt and felt very comfortable. Right now, the temperature close to zero, the wind chill a little bit below zero, although the winds right now are a little bit on the calm side. So December, relatively balmy, 2.1 degrees warmer than normal. That's a lot for an entire month. Not much in the way of snow, 2.5 inches for the month. January, a different story. The 5th and the 6th, that's when the pattern change began. The big snowstorm, 10.6 inches of snowfall, one of the biggest snowstorms in years. And then that put January on the map as the 11th snowiest January on record. And of course, after the big storm came the Arctic chill. As of when I recorded this on the 21st, we are looking at temperatures for the month, the average about 8 degrees colder than normal, and that is a big, big deal, courtesy of our winter weather friend, the polar vortex, which was headed south. In our neck of the frozen woods, after the big snowstorm, frigid Arctic air masses were guided into the tri-state. For the remainder of winter, the polar vortex heads north, our weather warms, it gets wetter, and it becomes very active as we head into March. So it looks like as we head through the rest of the month, we're going to have a gradual warming trend, getting close to normal, but staying a little colder than normal. Should be fairly active, so we'll have a number of chances of rain and snow. And as we head into February, we'll still have temperatures that'll average out a bit below normal. We should be done with the Arctic chill. Everything else says that as we head through February, we warm up to warmer than normal. We should enter March warmer than normal, but it looks like a very active February and March precipitation-wise coming into the tri-state. Well, that's it for the 2025 First Alert Winter Weather Special. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some very useful information. That's it for now, and don't forget, we're always keeping an eye on the weather for you in the First Alert Weather Center.
This has been Ahead of the Storm First Alert Winter Weather Special, sponsored by Roof Prodigy.